Hi everyone, and happy Novemberween. I'm your host JR, and today I'm joined by the whole crew. Oldar,
Howdy.
Min,
hello,
and Seren.
안녕하세요.
As per our annual tradition, today we're going to be reacting to and reviewing a movie for Novemberween, and what better one than the biggest film of the year, K-Pop Demon Hunters. As always, there will be spoilers, so keep that in mind as you go forward.
The plot of the movie is this. Rumi, Mira, and Zoe are a K-pop girl group, Huntrix, made up of demon hunters. They are from a long line of women working together to seal the Honmun, which is the door between our world and the demon world. The conflict arises when Guima, the underworld's leader, is convinced to debut a boy group in order to steal the girls' fans and hinder their mission. Little do Mira and Zoe know, Rumi is part demon, leading her to having an identity crisis. The groups battle it out on stage and in their everyday lives, but Rumi's secret is eventually revealed and the girls have to cope with this betrayal as well as the mounting threat of the demon boy group, Saja Boys.
K-Pop Demon Hunters was released on Netflix on June 20th, 2025. The story was created by Korean-American Maggie Kang and produced by Michelle Wong under Sony Pictures Animation. Kang wrote the screenplay with Hannah McMecken, Dania Jimenez, and her husband, Chris Applehans. Since the film's release, it has broken record after record, so let's name a few. It is the most watched movie on Netflix ever, and holds the title of the longest run in Netflix's top 10 section. They have also added a sing-along version on the streamer. We will touch on the music more at a later time, but the music hit number 1 on multiple international charts, including on the UK Singles Chart, Billboard, Spotify, and it also gained multiple perfect all kills in Korea. Once film and music award shows start off for the year, I'm sure we'll see even more accolades added on. About a month after its release, 2 sequels were announced by Netflix, and we now know that they are in talks with Sony again for production.
And finally, here are a couple of random things we want to mention. A sing-along version was released in theaters for a limited run across the world during summer. One article we found said that the movie made up to $20 million at the box office. During Halloween weekend, the movie was released for sing-alongs in theaters yet again. The Huntrix girls were added as skins in Fortnite, with fun K-pop-inspired emotes in late summer. The movie also inspired a substantial skit on SNL, featuring the Huntrix singers. Mattel made a deal for the merchandise licensing for the characters, so dolls will be released in 2026. Finally, according to Google search, the most searched Halloween costumes for the year were mostly comprised of K-Pop Demon Hunters characters.
Moving on, there were many notable actors, so we'll try not to get too crazy with this section. First, we'll start with Huntrix. Rumi was played by Arden Cho, who you might know from her role as Kira in Teen Wolf or Emily Cho on Chicago Med. Mira was played by Mei Hong. She was Sarah in High Maintenance and Margot Park in Tales of the City. Zoe is portrayed by Ji Young Yu. She played Casey in the movie Moxie and Megan in Until Dawn. Next, the Saja Boys. Jinu is voiced by An Hyo-suk of Business Proposal and Dr. Romantic fame. Joel Kim Booster plays Romance Saja. Some of his other roles include Noah in Fire Island and Ethan from Sweethearts. Alan Lee voices Mystery Saja and is a professional voice actor with roles like Shang Tsung in the Mortal Kombat games and Tsubaki in Fina Pirate Princess. Sungwon Cho plays Abby Saja. You may know Sungwon from his YouTube channel of the same name, but he is also a professional voice actor with roles like Senshi in Delicious in Dungeon and Boiled in Sakamoto Days. Baby Saja does not have a voice actor. Instead, Danny Chung, who provided the character's singing/rapping voice, recorded Baby Saja's only proper line in the movie, which is Goo Goo Gaga. Finally, let's talk about some characters outside of the K-pop groups. Daniel Dae Kim plays Healer Han. You likely know him from his Lost character, Jin Soo Kwon, or Hawaii Five-O's Chin Ho Kelly. Ken Jeong is the voice of Bobby, Huntrix's manager. He is well known for his role as Chang on Community and Leslie Chow in the Hangover trilogy. Yoonjin Kim plays Celine, the girl's mentor and a former hunter. She is a Lost alum as well, playing Sunhwa Kwon. Finally, the movie's big bad, Gima, is played by Lee Byung-hun. He was most recently in Squid Game as the frontman, but you may also know him from Our Blues. We may be wrong about this, but he was the only actor to perform for both the American and Korean dubs. I could not find a direct source for that, but in looking at the cast lists for both, his name was the only one that showed up both times, which makes sense. Although, An Hyo-sup could have also done the Korean, but he didn't. It was another man. Anyway, that is besides the point. Moving on.
We're not going to go deep into the artists, as we're going to have a specific episode on the movie's music that will come out someday in the future. Rumi's singing voice was provided by EJ. Audrey Nuna is Mira's singing voice. Zoe's singing voice is Rayami. Jinu's singing voice is Andrew Che. Samuel Lee sang for Romance Saja. Kevin Wu, yes, You Kisses Kevin. And also Shing, for those of you who remember, was Mystery Saja's voice. Neckwave was Abby Saja's voice. And finally, Danny Chung provided Baby Saja's singing voice.
So I'll start us off. Maggie Kang and the other people involved obviously really love K-pop, and it shows throughout every single detail in this movie. References to old school K-pop, busking, a weekly idol-esque show dupe, the music, the outfits. Everything was a love letter to K-pop fans, and I don't think I've ever experienced anything quite like it. I watched it with my sister and boyfriend originally, and they enjoyed it just as much as me, even without having the additional context that I came into watching the movie with. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, the time and care they put into this project really shows. And that they prioritized having Korean artists in every department while making the film also really has left a mark on the finished movie. It's really good.
Totally agree.
And I really liked it because it let me relax, because usually when I'm looking at a piece of media about K-pop, I'm ready to roll my eyes at its shallow understanding of the genre. And I've had this problem with multiple books, especially scholarly books, articles, podcasts, and videos that have come out over the years. I'm not expecting a blow-by-blow history of K-pop, just that they didn't stereotype it based on the last decade. But I was pleasantly surprised by how knowledgeable the creators and everyone involved with this movie were, and I felt like it had a good range of time periods included, which is something I didn't expect because I originally thought it was only going to be appealing to 3rd gen and up. Knowing that people involved were K-pop fans and thought to include references to groups such as Deuce was so delightful, and again, it let me relax and enjoy the movie, which really cannot be said most of the time.
And I told you going in, you have nothing to worry about, but you literally, for the first 5 minutes, you were on the offense.
Yeah.
And as soon as the Deuce clip song played, you're like, okay, I'm cool, I'm chill, this is fine. And I thought that was very funny.
Yeah. How do you get Oldar to trust you? Just play Deuce. I like that it was just there. It wasn't an obvious shoehorn. Like, it fit in there. It's like, oh yeah, this is part of the world. Because it is.
As for me, the first thing I liked was the mix of traditional elements, such as the tiger and the bird imagery, seen as Derby and Sussy. And then the good versus bad contrast of the hunters and demons. And the Tokebi, which is kind of like our version of the goblins, mixed into the storyline and the lore. And then I like the modern references that allude to like actual Korean or K-pop culture. For example, the public bathhouses or the 목욕탕 in Korean is mentioned a lot because Mira and Zoe are trying to take Rumi to the bathhouse so they can have like shower or take a bath together. And then there's one particular scene where the passersby are seen dressed in like at least 3 different types of weather outfits. Like one is dressed up in a whole jacket, one is wearing like very light summery clothes, and the other is wearing long sleeves. And people might get confused as to why are they all wearing different outfits, but this is a very common sight to see during usually early
Mm-hmm.
spring or in autumn because the temperature gets very erratic.
Yep.
If you're from the Midwest, you know exactly what she's talking about. But yeah, I thought they did such a great job of melding all those things together and making it cohesive and coherent, you know? Because it's a lot of different elements and it could get messy really quickly, but it was done with so much precision. I was very impressed by that as well.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I liked how the traditional elements, they did a really extensive research on the traditional elements. A lot of them are things that actual Koreans like me are often not made aware of because we are basically mostly like disconnected from the shamanistic elements of our tradition. So the weapons are actually weapons from elderly times or actual knives that shamans were using. And the lore itself is, honestly, it could be considered superstitious by many people who are shunning those traditions, but it's so refreshing to see them in a modern anime in such a way where it's depicted as something that's positive rather than demonic. So that's one thing I would like to commend on and give credit to the authors and writers.
Yeah. Like, the attention to detail, even on the simplest scenes of this movie, are absolutely amazing. I personally love the merch all of the fans have, and all of the backgrounds feels very lived in.
Mm-hmm.
And the outfits, the accessories are so great. When they pull up the charts, and they have other groups in the charts, the group names are amazing. I love Phenomenom's Young and Spicy. And SPF 100's Gotta Be. It's great. 10 out of 10. Love that.
So funny. And I love that Twice also just exists in this universe.
Yes.
Okay, so my second this kind of goes back to my last point, but I love that they played up on very specific K-drama tropes.
Yeah.
So, for example, when Rumi and Jinu meet for the first time, Love Maybe by Mellowmance from the K-drama Business Proposal plays in the background. This is, of course, a trope in K-dramas referencing other popular media, and I feel like you rarely see stuff like that in Western media, maybe sometimes with, like, sitcoms, but it is so extensive in Korean media, and I really love that. Also, it's funny because, like I said earlier, An Hyo-sup was in Business Proposal, so it's also like a little nod to him inadvertently because he was signed on after the script was finalized. So he didn't actually influence that decision, but I thought it was very amusing nonetheless.
A lot of American dramas like make those little inside joke references like regarding their actors and their previous works.
Right.
So yeah, it's kind of fun to see that in K-drama form. One other thing I would like to mention is the quote-unquote healthy depiction of an endearing manager and the Huntress girls eating delicious food, unlike the dieting stereotypes like you see in the K-pop community. Honestly, the girls binge eating before a performance is not necessarily realistic. Twice has actually mentioned on reaction video that they don't eat anything before a concert because they get digestion issues that can affect their performance. So it's not something actual K-pop singers would do, but how it's viewed in this movie is probably going to be a lot more healthy for young girls to watch and review those sort of scenes, because I know a lot of girls might think K-pop is all about starving and all about dieting. I don't want the viewers to have such an unhealthy stereotype about the lives of those K-pop singers, and I don't want them to experience such eating disorders in real life either.
Yeah, they kind of showed food as fuel, which I thought was good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the food looked so yummy. Like,
I know!
the animation on it was so good. I wanted to eat all of it.
The food the girls were eating were also very Korean.
For sure.
If you are familiar with Korean food, you know what kimbap is. You know what the ramyeon is. Even the ramyeon brand is a parody of an actual ramyeon brand in Korea. And then those chips, snacks, crackers that Zoe was throwing around in the air, that is definitely a parody of Seogang shrimp chips.
Okay, finally, obviously one of the most important parts of K-pop is the aesthetics, and this movie used the animated medium to its full potential. It was bright and bubbly, but the underworld was dark and moody. But one of my favorite aspects of this were Huntrix's stage outfits. I am incredibly partial to the military-inspired costumes, and I feel like they've kind of fallen out of favor in recent years, unfortunately. So seeing them utilized in this movie made me very happy. And also, all of the character designs were great, including Evil Calcifer. Like, I loved everything. Truly.
As for my last over the years, I've seen quite a few shows and movies that revolve around fictional bands, and usually, I can't help but doubt their music would be that popular in real life, but the music in this film being popular was believable, and even before I finished watching the movie, I downloaded the whole OST because I enjoyed it so much.
I thought this was going to be recorded before I received it, so I'm going to tweak this a little bit. So, they were really not prepared for this movie to blow up the way it did. So there was not a lot of merchandise / the physical CD was not released at the time of release. It actually came out a few months later in August, and I pre-ordered it, and I got the physical CD. And it came with a little poster, and I got a Zoe photo card. And I'll probably post pictures when this episode actually goes live, but it was a really cute CD. They have a lot of really fun doodles all over it. And yeah, I was very happy with my purchase.
So another thing I want to highlight is the casting. Most of the voice actors, including the singing voices, are of Korean background. And they even had an actual K-pop idol provide the singing voice of Mystery Saja, Kevin of U-Kiss, as we mentioned. I'm really glad to see the Asian or Korean representation in the cast. And this proves that we can totally make room to recruit Asian voice actors to voice actually Asian characters.
Mm-hmm. And that being said, the fact that Ken Jeong, Daniel Dae Kim, and Cho Sung-won are all in a movie together is so incredible to me because I've watched all of them separately, obviously, in their own careers. And they've had such different career trajectories, so them meeting up in this movie and everything just melding so well, I love that so much. And I am very happy for everyone involved in this and the success it's gotten.
It's kind of funny because I know Daniel Dae Kim from Hawaii Five-0, and I also saw him on The Good Doctor because he was involved in the production as well, and so it was airing in Korea when it first got released. So I mostly knew Daniel as the more serious characters with the heavier background story, but seeing him in such a more lighthearted side character is pretty refreshing for me. And I know Cho Sung-won from that one little video of Americans botching Asian names like that because that became a meme in Korea as well. It's actually refreshing to see him here as a voice actor as well because I only knew him of the more meme-worthy moments. Lastly, for Ken Jeong, I'm not real familiar with him as the other two characters, but he's left a big impression on me with this movie. And there are, of course, the new faces like Mei Hong or Yoo Ji-young. I just want to cheer for them with their breakthrough right now because this is probably the first time they're getting this much spotlight in Korea and overseas. The last detail I liked was how the writers depicted the complex relationship/bond between Rumi and Chinu. The conflict both characters dealt with regarding their responsibilities was well woven into the plot. And I also appreciate Maggie Kang for not making it overly romantic because I think that amplified Chinu's emancipation towards the end, as well as the cultural context that would be relevant to the character's lore. I saw in the director's Q&A, one person was asked why they didn't include a kiss scene between Rumi and Jinu at the end. I think it was Maggie who answered that question. They said, because the restraint is sexy.
I love that.
I think that was a little joke, but I appreciate their decisions so much. I'm not sure if me being a grade ace kind of influences it, but I do not like intimate scenes in dramas that much. And it just feels more natural that they just need to say goodbye and separate without having to be so affectionate. And I think that emotion will just transcend through how they just act or whatever little thing they leave behind for each other, rather than an actual physical gesture. Not everything needs to be physical, in my opinion. And the way they depicted it is the perfect way that would be totally validated in the regular storyline.
Yeah, sometimes romance lines can detract from the overarching story. And I think that it was a good call to not make it overly romantic, like you said.
It's relevant to the Korean culture as well because in the ancient times, physical sensuality was considered more taboo. To this day, even if people are start to embrace sexuality more and more, a lot of people still opine that kiss scenes, romance scenes aren't always necessary.
Well, and also they didn't get much time together. If you look at how long the movie was going on and also how long they knew each other, I don't think it was enough time.
They weren't exactly dating throughout the series.
It'd be different if they were immediate, yeah.
It doesn't really make sense for them to just suddenly blur out, oh, you know what, I love you, and while Jinu is disappearing from the earth.
Yeah. It's so funny that we're talking about this now because yesterday I watched The Rise of Skywalker for the first time. And spoilers for like a 5-6-year-old movie. Rey and Kylo Ren kiss, and it was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen because there was no build up to it. So, an example of doing things the wrong way. K-pop Demon Hunters, doing things the right way. Let's move on to the things we disliked about the movie. Starting us off, An Hyo-sup, who plays Jinwoo, doesn't provide the character's singing voice. And I think the guy they chose to do the singing voice, he has a beautiful voice. It's lovely. But for those of you who don't know, before debuting as an actor in 2015, a couple of months before that, he debuted in a project group with some other actors. Maybe I'll do a single scoop on them at some point. He was a trainee with the GOT7 boys, but obviously he was not picked for that team. That being said, he can sing so well. And from what I understand, they had already chosen the singing voices prior to casting him. So it makes sense that he didn't actually sing for Jinwoo. And I don't want this to be misconstrued in any way, shape, or form because Andrew Che has a beautiful voice. It just seems like a little bit of lost potential. And I would have liked it if he was able to sing all of the songs, but I understand why that didn't happen.
If it provides any comfort for you, Hyo-sup's singing segment in Jinwoo's entrance scene was included in the deluxe version of the soundtrack under the title Jinwoo's Lament.
Oh.
So it's less than a minute long, but if you want to hear Hyo-sup's voice, the track is out there for you.
Very nice, thank you.
I wish there was more time with Celine. We mostly just see her in flashbacks, so the very final scene with her and Rumi could have been more impactful. I'm not saying it wasn't impactful, but it could have had slightly more of an impact, because it felt a little like, I get it.
Lacking.
But it could have hit harder had we been able to spend a little bit more time with the two characters together. But again, it's a short runtime of a movie. There is limitations to what they can do. We're probably gonna see more of her in later installations of the franchise. Probably, maybe. Who knows? I don't.
That's what I'm hoping for. Or perhaps a spin-off prequel with, what were they called? The Sunflower Sisters or something like that?
Sunlight Sisters.
Sunlight, that's what it was, yeah. I think it would be really fun to have like a 90s-esque version of K-pop Demon Hunters. There would be so many fun aesthetic things they could do with it. / also show the difference in the culture.
The first dislike I have regarding this movie is that the plot is way too focused on Rumi and Jinwoo. I would have liked to know more about the other characters, not only the Huntrix and Saja Boys members, but also the secondary characters like Celine or Bobby. Maggie Kang also said they scrapped a certain lore behind Celine and Rumi's relationship, which I won't share here because it could be a possible spoiler alert if they decide to revive that lore. But one of the staff posted some early sketches regarding it on Instagram, so if you are curious about it, you can check it out. Because of that, not seeing Celine after the last confrontation was slightly jarring, so that I agree with Min.
Yeah, that was also weird. But again, time limitations.
Yeah, exactly. I would have liked to know a lot more about, for example, Mira's dysfunctional relationship with her parents, what Zoe was like when she was still living in Burbank, what the other Saja Boys members were like before they became demons, and the whole shenanigan behind Quima's scheme, so on. And so many things got truncated, mostly just regarding Rumi and Jinwoo's relationship. So that's one pet peeve I have about this movie.
I would assume that the sequels will remedy some of that and kind of dive deeper into at least Huntrix. I don't know if we're going to see the Saja Boys again. I would assume that we might, but we'll see what actually happens in the next few years.
Yeah, because only about 3 of the Saja Boys members were actually seen as becoming destructive, like because Jinwoo died. And then Zoe was going against Mystery, and Mira was going against Abby, so we still don't know what happened to Romance and Baby. So if there's a sequel, we might see them reviving and getting revenge. Like, maybe they could morph into a different imagery and, like, go by a different boy group. I mean, there could be different demons. Maybe we might see Klima taking action himself and disguising himself as something else. There are so many possibilities and so many characters that deserve a deep dive.
So, going back to your original point, though, JR and I talked about this when we did Dangerous Love, was that sometimes people, when they're writing, put way too many characters, details, plot lines in there to where they have a hard stop with the runtime. And so they just leave things, as it were, undone, or it's like, this is kind of weighted in one way instead of the other. And I feel like with this movie, there was a lot going on because they had a lot to do in a very short time. And so they focused on the main characters for obvious reasons. But the problem with that, though, was that all these secondary characters, which when you're talking about a K-pop group, even though you're going to have a face of the group, the other members make up the group. And you have to show, why are they there? What do they matter? That sort of thing. And we didn't really get to see that much. But I think, though, that just focusing on the mains was the way to go, considering, again, the lack of time. Like, there could have been a different distribution. But considering all that was going on here, I think it was more to keep the audience focused on the main point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that I can agree.
So this is really piggybacking off of Saturn's point. And I understand why they kept the plots so close to Huntrix and Jinu, but I would have loved to know more about the other Saja boys because they do not have characteristics outside of their defining one. There's obviously somewhat of a difference between them as demons and the other more monstrous, like the more traditional, like dokebi looking ones. I don't know if all of the demons have the capability to be in the Your Idol form where they look human but are like purple and have like the really glowy eyes and stuff. There's not a whole lot explained about how the demon world works and how their forms are expressed. So I guess we won't know unless we get a sequel, but I would be really interested to see a little bit more of an explanation regarding that.
Yeah, that's one thing I didn't really see it coming because, like, you guys are definitely seeing that from a foreigner's viewpoint. So one thing about the Tokebi in Korean culture is that they are very mischievous. In a lot of the folklore, they tend to depict them in a more negative way, such as causing trouble to humans or, like, livestock, even. But in reality, they just like to have fun, like, cause mischief. Honestly, for most of the time being, you can just leave them alone and just like give them a little bit of food or alcohol so they can entertain themselves and they won't hurt you.
Right, but the difference between that and this is that they're obviously under Gima's like
that's the
persuasion.
Cultural difference I see here because because in the Western world, demons are just mostly seen as negative and
right.
I think that kind of like transcended that into the Tokebi imagery because you guys are more about the direct contrast between good and bad. I definitely see like why they had to vilify the Tokebis, but
I think Maggie Kang kind of blurred the lines with that just to begin with, like from the get-go of the film.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like a faithful depiction of what a Dokebi would be. She just... Or maybe we will see that version of them in the following
maybe later
films. But they didn't really explain how any of that worked. So I am excited to see how they expand on that going forward.
Because in a lot of folktales, like Tokebis usually just want to mess around with the human world, like and they kind of like mimic humans and kind of morph into humans to cause like trouble. And then just go about with their beings and just leave when they get the little things they want. But I kind of see what you're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that actual Tokebi lore isn't explained fully in this story because they are shown as devils, basically.
Mm-hmm.
That does remind me about how some Christians and some religious people were not fond of this movie only because they were depicting goblins. I mean, the title itself is K-Pop Demon Hunters.
Mm-hmm.
The protagonists are hunting down demons. Why do you have a problem with it when Huntress is supposed to be playing the savior character? If we translate into your ideology, Why are you so
It should be the
unhappy
opposite.
about it?
That's what annoyed me too when I heard that. I was like, are you stupid? The first thing I thought of was, you should be thrilled. I was actually really annoyed with that. But then again, people just jump to stupid things. Well, JR and I both have discussed this a lot because we're both religious. And seeing that and being like, this is not what it is. Like, you're getting mad over this? We have real problems. And this is what you're going for? Get real.
Mm-hmm.
I personally watched this movie in both English and the Norwegian dub, because it's a children's movie, of course there are gonna be dubs. And dubs have a tendency to be a little cringe. And surprisingly, this one was fine. I just really wish that they dubbed the songs too. But that is more up to the dubbing teams and not the filmmakers that did this. Because, like, the people that make the movie are not the people dubbing the movie in most cases.
Right.
Except that one dude who made the music for Tarzan and just sung the song in every single language because he was a freak. Norway is a small market, so like
Right.
seeing German dub of the songs, the Russian dub of the songs, the Spanish dub of the songs. It's hilarious. I love it. I wish the local team would have had the money to do it, because I'm guessing it's a money issue, but I don't know this. This is me just talking out of my ass. I would suspect it's a money issue because we have a lot of good singers in this country that could have done this amazingly. So that for my specific country, that they did the cop-out and just did the songs in English, lame. They did do the little lullaby thing in Norwegian, I believe. But like, you could have just gone all out. It would have been more fun. Maybe they have changed it since I saw the dub, like, kind of immediately after I saw the initial release. But I doubt it. It would have been more fun.
I think the other problem also was likely that there was no infrastructure laid out for any of this because nobody was expecting this movie to do as well as it did.
No.
It's kind of like a very, I almost want to say grassroots, but it's a Netflix movie.
Yeah, but Netflix buys up a lot of weird stuff and just slaps their IP on it. So, not everything that has the trademark Netflix put their fingers into. Sometimes they just
that
bought
is true.
something.
From what I understand, Sony was going to distribute it normally, but they didn't have faith in it, and that's why Netflix ended up distributing it.
That's so funny.
Oh.
I think that also worked for them because of the audience that goes on Netflix, to where it was in the right market, as it were. And then when it ended up in theaters, even though it was for a short run, I think that was the right way to do it. Just specifically this case.
Because I wouldn't have gone to see it in theaters. I don't go to theaters.
No.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah.
I love going to the theaters. I only go for horror movies.
I also want to point out that the movie has a lot of Korean culture references, but several of the social cultural details are evidently from an American/foreign lens. For example, the writers clearly missed the opportunity to have Zoe call her fellow members 언니, because Maggie Kang did confirm in the Q&A that Zoe is a couple years younger than the other two members. And then the joint fan sign is different from the Korean fandom culture. The shipping culture in Korea tends to be more between idols of the same sex or gender, rather than a male idol group and a female idol group.
But that would have gotten the movie cancelled. Or at least dropped from the biggest markets, so...
China?
Or they could have marketed it as, like, queer-friendly K-pop drama. I don't know.
But then they couldn't have gotten the Chinese sales.
Ding, ding, ding. That's what the answer is.
Yeah.
That's a huge market.
In addition to that, the boy group fans versus girl group fans clashes in actual K-pop subculture show a different history from the international fandom culture. And lastly, the hypnotized fans walking all the way from COEX to Namsan Tower within the time span is close to impossible. Funny. I do know that the writers decided to switch from American artists to Korean sketch artists because someone decided to draw the Huntress members having like a bowl of soup and eating the soup with chopsticks.
Oh my God.
And they were like, no, this is not Korean at all. And they switched to all Korean artists.
That's why You need diversity on your teams.
Yeah, that's why you need cultural backgrounds.
Mhm.
That's really bad.
So I hope those who watch the series and want to visit both spots don't take the movie too seriously. Make use of the public transportation. A lot of the details were spot on, but at the same time, some of them were not spot on. One little advice from an actual Korean, me, is that everything needs to be taken with a grain of salt.
That's fair.
And I just kind of accepted that because they also had a group branded Private Plane. And as we know, even big groups like BTS don't have that. But it's common with these films. And when that first appeared on screen and JR and I were talking about it, I immediately started thinking of the absurd Spice Girls bus in their movie, which I don't know if you guys have seen that movie or remember that. But that stuck with me because I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, a private plane. I do know first gen sometimes took helicopters if they were short on time, but I'm not sure with private jets.
I just thought about something. When Super Junior first debuted, I think that this wasn't with Twins Knockout. I think this was just for Miracle. They had a Super Junior branded bus because there were 12 members, so they would go around together. And it was featured in the music video for Miracle. So sorry, I just realized that there was a thing that was specifically branded for a group. That was for a limited time, but sorry, I just remember that is something that, reminds me of this.
So I think I can explain a little bit of your concerns away with some trivia from the production of the movie. There was talk of having an Idol Star Athletics Championship-esque event in the movie. So ISAC, for those who know the acronym. And if you don't know what that is, they bring a bunch of male and female K-pop groups together and they pit them against each other and they compete in various sports events. So there's archery, there's like racing, there's a ton of different stuff.
I remember watching high jump.
Mm-hmm. It's Olympics for K-pop.
Yeah.
Archery
is always funny.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So they had a scene like that planned for the film, but the Western execs were very confused by this. This is not something that really has an equivalent in the States / in the UK. So they had to change it, and they changed it to the fan sign scene. I think the suspension of disbelief is good enough that those types of things, at least for like a K-pop fan, will be like, oh, that's a little weird, but I don't think it diminishes the scene. I think the scene's pretty funny, but I think there probably was a lot of similar things happening in the production just because Western executives have very little knowledge of K-pop as a whole, and they were probably like, oh, that's kind of weird. Maybe you should do XYZ instead. I don't know how much of that can be attributed to Western executives, but I would not be surprised if it's quite a bit of it. So when we were writing the script, there were rumors of a live action version of the film flying around because, you gotta jump on every single type of media there is when you get a hit. And at the time, I was like, this needs to be shot down immediately. And my girl, Maggie Kang, agreed, and she said that it is not happening. And if it does happen, it's probably not her fault. So, sometimes these companies just don't listen to creators' wishes and they do what they want, but we know that the creator of this IP does not want a live action film. So everyone keep that in mind.
We love that for them.
Mm-hmm.
So my only actual gripe with this film is that they can't make a TV show out of this specific storyline. Because in a TV show format, we could have gone so much deeper into the relationships and really built up the rivalry between Huntrix and Sunbaes. Because it would have been funny to see them go on more music shows and do the whole thing. Because it's kind of weird having a legacy group fighting a rookie group.
Yeah.
So that would have been funny. But again, seeing how...
Well, it happens a lot in actual K-pop too, especially when the rookie is a boy group.
Yeah. Boy groups have a tendency to soar higher if they first soar. But that might be misogyny. Who knows? I don't. Anyway. Seeing how incredibly successful this movie has been, the likelihood of Netflix making spin-off is incredibly high, and they have confirmed it after I wrote that part. But still. Hopefully, we hope and we believe that it will be made with as much love and care as this movie was. But there is the looming presence of the curse of spin-offs. It is inching closer. We will hope that it won't be but media companies have a tendency to see something that gets very popular and then rush into making the spin-offs. So we're hoping that there will be time and effort and patience put into the upcoming movies.
And I think that fear is especially founded in this case because K-Pop Demon Hunters was in the making for, I want to say, at least 8 years. I remember Maggie Kang saying that she started it before her daughter was even born. She named her daughter Rumi.
Oh my god.
And I think that's why Rumi is named Rumi in the movie. But her daughter is, like 8, 9, 10-ish now, as far as I know. So the movie has been undergoing revisions and stuff for that long. And now we're coming up to a bunch of sequels. And, it likely will be in the next 2 to 3 years. And that's a lot less time than this original took to make. So hopefully they'll have the resources and the right people in place to make good sequels.
Yeah. Hopefully they have the team just as informed and tight as this one. I think that's going to be the key to whether it's a good movie or not. Because there have been so many movies over the years, I'm sure all of us are thinking of at least 3, where the original was great, and then they're like, oh, we're going to make a sequel. But it didn't have the same writers, the same people who were passionate about it, involved in it. And even though I had more money, it totally bombed because it just couldn't hold up because it wasn't made by the people who cared. It was made as a cash grab of an existing IP. I think that's going to be the number one way that we know whether or not it's going to be good is let's see who's coming back. If this is coming back. And also as a Rockstar fan, let me just say, get comfortable with waiting for if you're expecting something good to happen next. Get comfortable with waiting a couple of years because you want them to have that time to make something great. You don't want them to jump into it and then it going badly because they just wanted to hit on the trend. The audience will be there, and especially if it's something good, they'll wait.
Mm-hmm.
That gave me an idea. Like, for the sequel, what would happen if the demons strike back and they decide to recruit, like, a foreign demon?
Technically, Jinwoo was that.
They could. I mean, we already have a Korean-American demon hunter, Zoe. It would totally be possible for the demon hunters to have at least one Korean-American dokebi or even a completely foreign demon. Because, K-pop has a lot of foreign members as well. It's just an idea, but it would be kind of funny because if that actually happens, I could also see the teamwork crumbling over cultural differences or the foreign demon like going astray or something like that.
I'm just imagining a demon with an Australian accent.
That'd be funny.
Lastly, the K-pop industry is depicted in a simplistic, idealistic direction. I understand the need to do so because the animated film would have initially targeted younger viewers, maybe under the age of 10. But at the same time, it leaves a lot of discrepancy between the show and the real life of actual K-pop idols and the people who work in the industry. So most of the minor characters shown in this series are big fans of either Huntress or Rumi, but they're never depicted as the indifferent general public. They're not depicted as openly hateful antis, and you don't even have any of the parasocial settings who develop an unhealthy obsession over their biases. A lot of the more behind-the-scenes work, like the recording sessions, the music video filming, and so on, are underrepresented in favor of the girls' songwriting, performances, and Rumi's spontaneous decision to release Golden early. And lastly, Bobby is rarely seen doing the tasks of an actual manager. For example, managing schedules or contacting other staff over their promotions. I wasn't thinking about this particular detail when I first watched it, but as I kept rewatching it and started to compare what I've actually seen over the years, regarding the behind the scenes content of my favorite K-pop artists, it started to dawn on me later on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys noticed.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I thought it was more along the lines of Why are there gas stations in GTA, but you don't have to stop and fuel up? Well, because if you're being chased by the cops with a 5-star wanted level, you don't want it to where suddenly the car dies, not because of loading or because you crashed it, but because you run out of gas. But there's a point to where you have too many details to where it bogs it down again.
Mm-hmm.
Considering what all they were doing, I think it was more about streamlining it to where you could get it across. And especially because this movie introduced K-pop to a lot of people who were not familiar with K-pop outside of, yes, there is this music. So it introduced people to a lot of general facets and what you can expect.
Yeah.
So it introduced people to K-pop in what are things you can expect with it. What are some standards?
Mm-hmm.
Like JR and I have talked multiple times about the difference between OSTs in the US versus Korea, especially with dramas.
Right.
So I think it was more about that. And then if people want to more get into that, that's when they find a group that they like and then they go through and then they will see that daily.
Yeah, I think just stripping K-pop down to core elements is what made this work so well. Because when you're branding something, you don't want it bogged down by extraneous details. Frankly, I think this is something they can explore in the sequels. You know, maybe going a little bit deeper into the K-pop industry as a whole. It would be kind of funny to have like a K-pop company head be a demon, you know, like kind of play up on how companies don't always have the best interests in mind for their idols. Yeah, I think there's so much in K-pop, and the sequels will have a very broad swath of aspects to take from going forward. So, yeah, that's probably what it is. I don't know.
To wrap up, we really enjoyed K-Pop Demon Hunters, despite our different tastes and expectations for this movie. If you haven't seen it already, we ask that you give it a chance because we think it's a good representation of K-pop for both seasoned fans and people who have no interest in it. Before we go, we wanted to let you know that we're also going to be releasing a separate episode on the OST, as there are way too much to talk about when it comes to the music of this film. So we hope you look forward to that. But that's it for today. JR, take it away.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, then please make sure to rate, subscribe, follow, and tell your friends about us. If you want to interact with us, or just see more of our content, then you can follow the links in the description to our website and social media platforms. More single scoops are coming your way soon. Thanks everyone. Bye!
Bye!
다음에 봐요.
안녕.